Welcome back to Daily English Dive. Today we are going to get into a feeling that I think, well, I know for a fact, pretty much everyone listening has felt at least once.
Oh, probably more like once a day for most of us.
Yeah, exactly. It's that very specific hesitation when you want to start something new. So maybe you want to start learning English or start painting or just get in shape, but you freeze.
You stop before you even really start.
Right. And our deep dive topic today is all about this idea. Start without perfection. We really want to figure out how to overcome that discouragement we feel when we look at our own messy beginnings and, compare them to someone else's polished success.
It's basically the paralysis of perfectionism, but specifically it's about why we freeze. Because usually it's not that we actually lack the ability to do the thing.
No, not at all.
It's because we look at someone else doing it way better, and suddenly our own little effort just feels completely pointless.
We have some really fantastic sources for our deep dive today that tackle this exact problem. We've got articles on psychology, some notes on habit formation, and a really great central story, a parable, actually, about a woman named Maya and her garden.
Which is such a powerful metaphor, by the way.
It really is. It honestly changed how I look at my own progress. And the mission for this deep dive is to analyze the psychology behind why our brains self-sabotage like this. We're going to share that story about Maya and then give you a major mindset shift to help you escape what the sources call the comparison trap.
Especially for English learners listening to this, that mindset shift is going to be crucial.
Definitely. But before we get to Maya and the garden, I want to introduce a character from our source material. Let's call him Jack. Because honestly, reading this, I felt like I am Jack. I think we are all Jack.
Jack is definitely the modern archetype for this problem.
He really is. So let's look at Jack's morning. He wakes up. It's a Tuesday. The sun is shining. He makes a nice cup of coffee. He's feeling good,
He's ready to tackle the day.
Exactly. He's got his little to-do list. He is feeling capable and motivated.
And then he makes the classic mistake, the mistake I think most of us make within maybe 10 minutes of opening our eyes.
Yeah, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out his phone, and he opens Instagram. Now, keep in mind, Jack is currently trying to learn a second language. He's been studying for about 3 months.
Which is a solid effort.
Right. He's proud of himself. But the very first thing he sees on his feed is a video.
Let me guess. It's not a video of someone struggling with basic grammar.
Not even close. It is a 12-year-old boy. And this kid isn't just speaking a second language. He is switching fluently between 5 different languages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's laughing. He's making jokes in French. Then he seamlessly switches to Mandarin and then to Spanish.
That's really tough to watch when you are just struggling to, order a coffee in your target language.
Right. So Jack feels a little pinch in his chest, but he just keeps scrolling. Next, he sees a guy his exact age, maybe someone he even went to high school with, holding up a set of keys to a brand new multi-million-dollar mansion.
And just like that, Jack's little apartment starts to feel a whole lot smaller.
Exactly. And finally, just to really twist the knife, he scrolls down and sees a fitness model running on a beach in Bali with this perfect 8-pack, drinking a coconut.
Okay, so let's pause the scene right there. What just happened to Jack emotionally in those, 2 minutes?
Well, his coffee tastes like mud now. He looks around his apartment and suddenly it just looks dingy and cheap. He thinks about his language study and feels like, man, what's the point? I'm never going to be that 12-year-old kid.
He feels totally discouraged. He feels like a failure.
Yeah. And here is the absolutely critical part from the research. Jack's life did not actually change.
Not one bit.
Nothing in the physical world changed. His vocabulary is exactly the same as it was 10 minutes ago. His apartment is the same size. His health is the same. The only thing that changed was where he directed his attention.
It's wild when you really break it down. He was perfectly happy. Then he looked at a glowing rectangle, and now he's miserable.
So why does this happen? The sources get into the psychology of this, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
This is what psychologists call upward social comparison. It's basically when we compare ourselves to people we perceive as being better or ahead of us in some way. And the interesting thing the sources point out is that our brains are actually hardwired to do this.
Wait, really? It's not just a bad modern habit.
No, it's biology. It's an evolutionary mechanism.
But why? Why would evolution wire us to deliberately feel bad about ourselves? That seems like a terrible strategy for survival. Like, hey, look at that guy over there. He's way stronger than you. Now feel terrible and go hide in a cave.
Well, you have to think about it in the context of a tribe, thousands of years ago. If you saw someone in your village who was a better hunter than you, or who figured out how to build a better shelter, it was actually really helpful to notice that.
Oh, I see. So you could learn from them.
Exactly. You could walk over and ask, hey, how did you do that? It was a survival mechanism to ensure the whole tribe improved.
Okay, so it was basically just a form of motivation.
Right. But crucially, back then, you were comparing yourself to maybe 30 or 40 people in your local village. That is a manageable level of competition. You might be the third best runner in your tribe. That feels okay.
But Jack isn't in a village of 40 people.
No. Jack is on the internet. He is comparing himself to the top 0.001% of the entire human population.
All 8 billion of us.
Exactly. He isn't competing with his neighbor anymore. He is competing with the highly curated highlights of the entire planet.
It's just a completely rigged game.
It is mathematically unfair. The source material actually calls it an asymmetric battle because you are fighting against an army made up of the absolute best moments of everyone else's lives.
And that perfectly sets up that famous quote we saw in the notes, Theodore Roosevelt. Comparison is the thief of joy.
It really is the thief. And to explain how this thief actually operates, how it literally steals the joy right out of your hands, I want to bring up the co-analogy from the research.
Oh, yes. The concept of relative deprivation. Right. Let's get into that, because I think it explains the feeling better than almost anything else.
Yeah. So imagine you, the listener, you go out and buy a car. Now, it's not a Ferrari. It's a very sensible sedan, maybe a Honda or a Toyota, but it's nice.
It's new to you. It's got that new car smell.
Right. It has cold air conditioning, a really good sound system. It's completely reliable.
I mean, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You drive it home. You are just beaming. You feel so successful. You're listening to your favorite song. The AC is blowing.
Yeah.
You are 100% happy with your purchase.
Okay, I'm in the zone. I am happy.
Then you pull into your driveway. And at the exact same moment, your neighbor pulls into their driveway. And your neighbor is driving a brand new, bright red convertible Porsche.
Oh, no.
The engine roars. The paint is shining in the sun.
And suddenly my reliable Toyota feels like a plastic toy.
Right. The joy just vanishes instantly. You look at your car, and instead of seeing reliable, comfortable transport, you just see junk. You see slow. You see cheap.
I completely hate my car now.
But, and this is the core question I want everyone to think about, did your car actually change?
No,
Oh,
not at
yeah.
all. It's the exact same metal, the same engine, the same AC.
The car is physically identical to what it was 5 minutes ago when you loved it.
Yeah.
But your perception of its value completely collapsed. Why? Because of the comparison.
The neighbor's car stole my joy without anyone even touching my car.
That is relative deprivation. We judge our happiness not by what we actually have, but by the gap between what we have and what we see others having.
And that gap, man, that gap is a really dangerous place to live, especially for learners. Like if you are learning English and you constantly compare your speaking to a native speaker on YouTube, that gap is just massive.
And that massive gap is exactly where the story of Maya comes in. This is really the heart of our deep dive today. Her story perfectly illustrates what happens when we let that gap dictate our actions.
So let's set the scene for Maya. She is just a regular woman. She lives in a modest, normal house, but she has this patch of brown dirt in her front yard, and it's just ugly. It's full of rocks. Nothing grows there.
And she decides she wants to change it.
She does. She decides she's going to build a garden. Now, this is a very important detail. She isn't doing it to win a neighborhood contest. She isn't doing it to take aesthetic photos for social media.
She just wants a garden.
Yeah, she just wants to see some yellow flowers when she looks out the window. She just wants to make something beautiful for herself.
In psychology, we call that intrinsic motivation. The drive to do the thing comes from inside you, not from an external reward.
So she starts. And anyone who has ever started a garden, or frankly started learning a language, knows that the beginning is just really hard work.
It's the messy phase.
It really is. She's out there on her hands and knees. She's pulling up rocks. She's getting sunburnt. Her fingernails are full of dirt.
But she pushes through that initial friction.
She does.
Yeah.
She keeps going. She plants some sunflower seeds. She plants some vines. And after a few weeks of watering this bare dirt, she finally sees these tiny little green shoots poking out of the ground.
And how does she feel in that moment?
She's completely thrilled. She is so proud. She literally calls them her little babies. She's out there watering them every single morning. She is fully engaged in the process, and she is genuinely happy.
Notice what's happening there. She is in her own lane. She is comparing her garden today to her garden yesterday when there was just dirt. So her brain registers progress, and progress creates joy.
But then the environment changes. The huge, empty lot right next door to her house gets sold, and in moves Mr. Thomas.
Ah, here comes the Porsche.
Oh, it's way bigger than a Porsche. Mr. Thomas builds an absolute mansion. But it's not just the house that's intimidating, it's the garden. He has these professional landscaping trucks arriving day and night.
So they aren't out there planting little seeds on their hands and knees.
Definitely not. They are bringing in full-grown, 100-year-old oak trees on giant cranes.
That is just a completely different level of resources.
Exactly. He has these massive stone fountains with dancing water. He has perfectly manicured red roses that literally look like they were painted by an artist. I mean, it looks like the gardens of Versailles next door.
And Maya's just watching all of this happen from her little porch.
She is. She looks over the fence at his absolute paradise, and then she slowly looks down at her own little patch of dirt with those tiny, fragile green stems, and the feeling just hits her like a truck.
Total inadequacy.
She feels foolish. She thinks to herself, why am I even bothering with these pathetic little weeds? Look at what he has. Her garden, which was her greatest source of pride literally 5 minutes ago, is suddenly a source of deep shame.
And this is exactly where the comparison trap snaps shut on us. And it leads to a very specific psychological state that the sources outline called learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. Can we unpack that term a bit? Because it sounds a little intense for just a story about gardening.
It does sound intense, but it applies perfectly. Learned helplessness is a state where an individual feels that no matter what effort they put in, the outcome won't change. So their brain just tells them to stop trying entirely.
So it's an extreme form of giving up.
Yes, Maya looks at the massive gap between her tiny seedlings and his towering oak trees. Her brain automatically calculates the distance, and it says, you will never bridge this gap. You can never be that good, no matter how much you water those seeds.
So her brain basically concludes, if you can't win the game, don't even play.
Precisely. It feels emotionally safer to just quit than to keep trying and constantly fail to measure up to the neighbor. So what happens? What does Maya actually do?
She stops watering. She literally just stops going outside altogether. She closes the curtains facing his house. She stays in bed and just thinks, what's the point?
And this is the real tragedy of the comparison trap.
Yeah.
Because she stopped watering, what inevitably happens to her little sunflowers?
They die. They just wither up and turn brown. The weeds take over the dirt patch again. She effectively self-sabotages her own progress. She killed her own beautiful thing simply because it wasn't his beautiful thing.
She let the thief take everything.
But, and this is why I love this source material, the story doesn't end there. And I think this next part is what really resonated with me, because I have absolutely been Maya. I have quit so many hobbies because I wasn't an expert on day one.
We all have. It's human nature to want immediate mastery.
So a few weeks later, Maya is standing on her porch looking at her dead garden, just feeling completely miserable. And Mr. Thomas, the rich neighbor with the mansion, sees her over the fence. Now, she expects him to be this fancy, arrogant guy in a suit, but when he walks over to the fence, he's a total mess.
What do you mean? Describe him.
He's covered head to toe in mud. He's sweaty. He's holding a dirty shovel. He looks completely exhausted. He doesn't look like some garden magician. He looks like a laborer.
And they strike up a conversation.
Right. He asks her what happened to her garden. And she just admits it to him. She says, I stopped working on it because I saw yours. Yours is absolutely perfect. Mine is just pathetic. And you know what Mr. Thomas does? He laughs. He actually laughs out loud.
Because he knows the secret. And this brings up another huge concept from our sources, the iceberg illusion.
Yes, he tells her, Maya, you are only seeing the roses. What you don't see is the massive pile of dead roses behind my shed that I completely destroyed while I was trying to figure out how to grow them.
That is the iceberg illusion in a nutshell. We see the success, we don't see the struggle. An iceberg only shows 10% of its mass above the water. That's the beauty, the fluency in English, the big muscles. But we completely miss the 90% underwater.
The failures, the early mornings, the years of frustrating practice.
Exactly. And then Mr. Thomas says, the line, that is literally the title of our deep dive today, he looks at Maya and says, Maya, you are comparing your chapter 1 to my chapter 20.
I really want every single person listening to pause and just internalize that. You are comparing your chapter 1 to my chapter 20.
It just makes so much sense when you frame it that way. Mr. Thomas has been gardening for 30 years. Maya's had been gardening for 3 weeks.
It is what the sources call an asynchronous comparison. The timelines just don't match up at all.
Think about this for language learning. If you are learning English and you listen to a native speaker, or even us doing this deep dive, you are hearing our Chapter 20. You are hearing the result of decades of constant input and practice.
Right.
If you are on Chapter 1 of your English journey and you sound like Chapter 1, that isn't a failure. That is exactly where you're supposed to be. That is appropriate.
It's literally just math. You're supposed to sound like a beginner when you are a beginner.
But we completely forget this reality because of modern technology. Social media is just a highlight reel. We see that 12-year-old polyglot. We see the fitness model, the guy with the mansion. We are consuming everyone else's polished Chapter 20s all day long on our phones.
While we're actively living in our own messy, unedited Chapter 1, we know our own struggles intimately. We know we hit snooze 3 times this morning. We know we forgot that basic vocabulary word. We see our entire behind-the-scenes documentary, but we are only ever watching everyone else's movie trailer.
So Maya hears this from Mr. Thomas, and she has this massive realization. She realizes she has been incredibly unfair to herself.
She realizes she's been a really bad friend to her own garden. She let it die just because her ego couldn't handle the comparison. So she does something physical to break the spell. She actually turns her back on the fence.
It's a very symbolic action.
She physically turns away from the mansion, and she looks down at her own patch of dirt. And she picks up the hose. She starts watering her own seeds again.
Because she shifts her focus. And according to the psychology sources, this is the ultimate cure. She moves her brain from social comparison, which is me versus you two, temporal comparison.
Temporal comparison. That sounds a little academic. What does that actually mean for us in daily practice?
It simply means comparing yourself to yourself across time. It's you today versus you yesterday.
And why do the sources say that is the cure?
Because it is the only mathematically fair comparison you can make. The variables are exactly the same. You have the same genetics, the same background, the same resources. If Maya has one single green leaf today and she had 0 leaves yesterday, she's definitively winning.
Even if the neighbor have a forest.
Exactly. It does not matter if Mr. Talmud has a forest. Her personal trajectory is pointing up. That is success.
I love that so much. For our listeners who are studying English, this is huge. Think about it. If you understood 50% of the words in this deep dive today, and last month you only would have understood 40%, you are winning.
Precisely. You are undeniably winning. The goal isn't to be indistinguishable from a native speaker overnight. The goal is just to be slightly better than you were yesterday.
It reminds me of that classic idiom we use in English. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. We always assume other people have it better or easier than we do.
But there is a fantastic modern correction to that idiom in our notes, which I absolutely love. It changes everything. It says, the grass is greener where you water it.
Yes, the grass is greener where you water it.
Your attention is literally like water. If you constantly pour your attention into jealousy, into staring at the neighbor's yard, your jealousy is what grows. But if you pour your attention into your own work, your own daily study, your own small habits, then your skills grow.
So we basically need to stop watering the neighbor's yard with our attention. But practically speaking, how do we actually do this? We live in a highly digital world. We can't just turn off the internet and throw our phones in the ocean.
No, we definitely can't. But we can curate our digital environment. The sources suggest 2 highly practical tools for managing this in the modern world. The first tool is called unfollow therapy.
Unfollow therapy. I really like the sound of that. How does it work?
It's basically just applying basic digital hygiene. You have to recognize the concept of emotional contagion. Emotions are quite literally contagious like a virus. If you follow an account online, even if it's technically a good account, like a really advanced educational page, but every single time you see their posts, you feel deeply inadequate. You need to unfollow them.
See, I think people feel really guilty about doing that. They think to themselves, oh, but that person is so successful and inspiring. I should be inspired by them.
But the reality is, if you aren't actually inspired, if you are just ending up discouraged and wanting to quit, then it's not working for you. It's completely okay to use the mute button. It's okay to protect your peace of mind. You aren't being a hater. You are just setting a healthy boundary so you can focus entirely on your own. Chapter 1.
So be absolutely ruthless with the mute button. I love that. That's tool 1. What is tool 2? Because realistically, sometimes you can't unfollow people. Like, what if the person triggering you is your coworker or your brother-in-law?
Right. You can't exactly block your coworker in real life. In that case, you have to actively change your internal mindset. The sources call this switching from using them as a mirror to using them as a map.
Mirror versus map. Break that down for us.
So Usually, we use successful people as a mirror. We look at them, and we immediately see our own flaws reflected back at us. Our brain says, they are rich, which means I am poor, or they are fluent, which means I am slow and stupid. That's using them as a mirror.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about the map?
Using them as a map is when you look at that exact same successful person, and instead you say, oh, look at that. They are standing at the exact destination I want to reach eventually. I wonder how they got there.
Ah, I see. So you intentionally turn that feeling of malicious envy into genuine curiosity.
Yes. You study them instead of resenting them. You ask them, what did your chapter 1 look like? What specific textbook did you use back then? How many hours a day did you practice? You stop resenting their final result, and you start actively studying their process.
That is just such a vastly healthier way to live your life. Instead of thinking, I hate that they have that skill, your default reaction becomes, show me the path so I can do it too.
Exactly. It transforms the entire world from a hostile competition into a free university. Every single person who is currently better than you at something is just a potential teacher.
I really, really like that perspective. It takes all the immense pressure off of you. You don't have to beat them today. You just have to learn one small thing from them today.
And above all else, you have to keep watering your own seeds. Because at the end of the day, your own effort is the only thing you actually have control over.
All right, so bringing this all back together for today, we started by looking at Jack and his depressing morning doom scroll. We talked about how our brains are actually evolutionarily wired to compare upwards and how the internet makes that impossible to win.
And we saw how Maya literally killed her own beautiful garden because she couldn't handle the gap between her starting point and her neighbor's finish line.
But then we learned that the way out of the trap is to fully embrace being in Chapter 1, to recognize that everyone else's Chapter 20 is built on top of years of invisible underwater failure.
And to utilize temporal comparison. Always look at your own progress over time, rather than looking side to side of others.
So we want to leave you with a very small challenge today based on the source material. A practical way to implement this temporal comparison in your own life. It's incredibly simple.
We just want you to take a moment today to fill in the blank for this specific sentence. Today I am better at blank than I was yesterday.
And it really doesn't have to be a big world-changing thing. It can be something like, today I am better at making my morning coffee. Or for our language learners, today I am slightly better at listening to English without needing the subtitles.
It could even be a mental victory, like, today I am better at catching myself when I start unfairly comparing my life to someone on Instagram.
Oh, that's a really good one. The point is just to find one small area where you have genuinely grown, acknowledge it out loud, give yourself the credit you deserve for that growth.
Because acknowledging that growth is exactly how you water your grass. That is how the garden actually grows.
And before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, something that wasn't explicitly in the notes, but it builds on everything we've talked about.
Let's hear it.
We spend so much energy envying the people in Chapter 20, right? The experts. But what if those perfect people you see online are actually imprisoned by their own success?
Oh, that's an interesting angle.
Think about it. Because they have an audience expecting perfection, they can never try anything entirely new. They're terrified of ever looking like a beginner again. So in a weird way, your messy Chapter 1 is actually a state of total freedom. You can make mistakes, you can experiment, and nobody's judging you because you're just starting.
Wow. Being a beginner is a privilege, not a punishment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every giant 100-year-old oak tree in Mr. Thomas's garden started out as a tiny, vulnerable little nut that just refused to give up the process. So keep growing. Take advantage of that Chapter 1 freedom.
And keep diving.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.